The longtime Hoosier sports writer Mark Montieth is out with his second book. Reborn chronicles the return of pro basketball to Indianapolis, the formation of the Pacers franchise in its first 2 seasons. Mark says his original intent was to cover maybe all 9 ABA seasons, but he gathered so much material he had to restrict it to just those first 2 seasons. And for more on his experience and what's next, I'm pleased to be joined by Mark Montieth. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, you are. What prompted you to write this? This is a fascinating book. I think a lot of people would find it very interesting, intriguing. Lots of great pictures. What prompted you to write the book?
Well, I grew up in Indianapolis, and the ABA was formed when I was a 12-year-old kid, and I went to a lot of those games at the Coliseum, and that's the age when you're really rah-rah about sports, you know, kind of an idealistic age. So I grew up with those seasons, and then later became a sports writer for a newspaper and met a lot of the people involved in those days and was really intrigued by the stories. So I just wanted to put that into a book form and tell people how you start a franchise and get it off the ground.
What I think is interesting in this book, you had access to documents about the formation of the team that a lot of people you certainly weren't able to see. So you've seen some things about those early formative years. What are some of your remembrances of those documents?
Yeah, I was very lucky. Chuck DeVoe, who was one of the founders of the franchise, gave me the personal files and scrapbooks of his brother John, who was the second team president. So I got minutes from meetings, you know, salaries and everything, all kinds of notes that really added a lot of depth to the book. So, you know, I've got a copy of the $30,000 check that the Pacers sent to officially become an ABA franchise, the draft, what guys were getting paid, you know, what kind of controversies there were, that type of thing. So it was really fascinating to see that information.
And we were talking off camera, the team was actually, in a sense, birthed, if you will, in Lafayette.
Yes, there was an annual meeting or dinner at the country club up there, a big game dinner. And Bob Collins, the Star sports editor, would go up every year. And they were sitting around a table one night, a few Lafayette businessmen and a couple people from Indianapolis. And Collins is telling them how, you know, there's this new league being formed and there's a meeting coming up in New York. And it only costs about $6,000 to put dibs on a franchise. And they probably had a few drinks, you know, and they said, well, let's do it.
And the rest
so
is history.
Joe Bannon, the president of the bank at Lafayette, went, and there's pictures in the book of him, and put dibs on the franchise, and that was the very beginning. The next day in the Indianapolis newspapers were stories about Indianapolis back in pro basketball.
Yeah, looking at some great old footage there brings back a lot of great memories of a lot of great players. As you look back on it, and plus these were different times. I mean, the games were hustle bustle, fights on the floor, fights in the stands. There was all kinds of stuff going on.
Rowdy atmosphere. You know, the Coliseum atmosphere was like no other. You got smoke over the floor because you could smoke in there. It smelled a little bit from the state fair, all the barn animals that were in the Coliseum. You know, fans could throw stuff on the floor and probably not get kicked out. They would just clean up. If there was a fight, the players would not get kicked out. You just break it up and move on. So, you know, it was a very much different atmosphere than what you see today.
Yeah, and the ability of the team to get Slick Leonard as their coach. He was not coaching at the time, right?
Very lucky. A lot of luck went into getting this thing off the ground. You know, the second year they get off to a 1-7 start. They need a new coach. Well, what do you know? Slick Leonard's working for Herff Jones up in Kokomo selling graduation supplies. Let's go get him. Yeah. And they did, and he did it on a part-time basis, basically. So the Pacers got a Hall of Fame coach out of, you know, Herff Jones. They got a Hall of Fame player in Roger Brown out of a factory in Dayton. They got a Hall of Fame center in Mel Daniels on an unbelievable trade for $100,000. Yeah. So they had a lot of luck in putting this thing together.
Yeah, and this really was a citywide effort to get this team created, launched. And I would argue that it's been a precursor for downtown development in a lot of ways.
No question, no question. I mean, the Chamber of Commerce was behind this. The city government was behind this. The newspapers really got behind it to a degree that would not happen today.
Right.
And yes, and that the success of the Pacers kind of created the demand for a new facility, and Mayor Lugar stepped in and got Market Square Arena going, and that started redevelopment of downtown.
Yeah, very good. It is a great read. Mark, for folks who want to get the book, where should they go?
You can get it at any Barnes & Noble throughout the state of Indiana. It is on Amazon.com. It is on BarnesandNoble.com. I think any bookstore in the country can get it for you. I've got a distributor here in town, Cardinal Publishing Group, so they put it out to everybody, and that's widely available.
Very good. Reborn is a great read. A lot of you will love to see some of the old pictures and read about the formation of the Indiana Pacers. Mark Montieth, thanks very much. Congratulations on the book.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.